Okay, today I will be doing a video on what you can put into your retro computer in terms of storage devices. So this video is about IDE adapters for retro PC computers. So if you can't find the IDE hard drive, you can always use a compact flash card adapter. So this has about 50 pins for the adapter, and there's 50 slots on the card, on the compact flash card, and you just stick it into the adapter and you stick that into your IDE interface on your motherboard. So this will enable you to use a compact flash card in an IDE port on a retro motherboard. This would be like an improvised SSD, so it could be used to store your operating system on. So this would be useful for like installing your operating system on, and it's pretty fast. It's capable of about 50 megabytes per second, which is comparable to 100 megabits per second. So IDE hard drives were capable from anywhere from 66 megabits per second to 133 megabits per second. So that's about 8.25 megabytes per second for 66 megabits per second, and as for 133 megabits per second, that would be equivalent to 16.63 megabytes per second. So this is more than capable. So if you had an interface which was 100 megabits per second, ATA EIDE 100, then you would be able to use the entire bandwidth. And 100 megabits per second is 12.5 megabytes per second, so you'd be able to use the entire bandwidth. So that's not a problem. And a good thing about NAND storage devices is that they don't degrade with use, so you can read an unlimited amount of times and it should not degrade. However, if you write to it a lot, it will degrade, since you're not going to be updating your operating system. Most likely it's just going to be used like a ROM or something, you know. So it's not going to do a lot of writing. So it should be okay. And it should last a very long time. A Windows 95 operating system takes up about 50 to 55 megabytes of storage space, and Windows 98 operating system takes up about 195 megabytes to 295 megabytes of storage space. So having a 16 gigabyte compact flash card would be more than enough for installing Windows 95 or Windows 98 on. You shouldn't have a problem with it. So if you want to install Windows XP, that would take up about 1.5 gigabytes of storage space. So a 16 gigabyte compact flash card should be enough. That should be enough memory. For the other three, so let's say you have 4 IDE ports on your motherboard, you could use one of them to put your compact flash card adapter into it, and you could do the same for the other one, another one, so you could add 2 of them. Or if you don't want to do that, you could just add a SATA hard drive via SATA to IDE adapter. You could use that. That's an option. So I'll get to that later. So most IDE or EIDE hard drives are anywhere from 12 to 20 years old. IDE hard drives were phased out of circulation at about 2007 to 2008. Most IDE hard drives are well worn, and if you can manage to buy one at eBay, the life expectancy of most IDE hard drives are near the end of its life cycle. So if you buy an IDE hard drive, it's going to be very old. It's going to be very worn out, basically. Fortunately, there are other alternatives you can take to getting a storage device for retro computer. Using a compact flash card to IDE adapter is one of them. You can also use a Sata to IDE adapter. That's kind of like the adapter that you see for the compact flash to IDE adapter, except that you're able to plug in SATA interfaces to it. So you can use a SATA hard drive with an adapter. However, there are limits to what kind of SATA hard drives you can use. Let's say you had a socket 478 motherboard made in 2001. So this motherboard might only support hard drives which are 250 gigabytes or less. If you put in a terabyte or 1000 gigabyte hard drive, it might not work. Old SATA hard drives are still readily available on sites like eBay, Amazon, Newegg, and other sites. From my experience, I used a 250 gigabyte EID hard drive in a computer that was produced in 1999, like a Gateway E3400 computer, which has a Pentium 3 933 MHz processor in it. The SATA hard drives you should look for should range from 80 gigabytes to 250 gigabytes. So it's the BIOS is going to be a factor. So the BIOS is for old retro motherboards, x86 motherboards. They probably won't support 500 gigabytes or a terabyte hard drive. So you're going to have to get a hard drive which is 80 gigabytes to 250 gigabytes in size. That's all. Okay, so most old Pentium 4 socket 478 base motherboards may not have any SATA ports. They might not have SATA ports on the motherboard. Nor will they have SATA power connectors on the ATX power supplies. So that's gonna be something that you're gonna run into a lot when you buy retro computers. So if this is the case, you could use a SATA to IDE adapter. The device adapter you see on the far left allows you to use a SATA hard drive in a motherboard which only has IDE ports. So what you see on the left, you see in the middle of that thing, it has a SATA port in it. So you connect your SATA cable into it, and you connect that the other end of the SATA cable into your hard drive. SATA hard drive, which has another SATA port on the hard drive itself. So you just connect it. And there's also a SATA power port, but I'm going to get to that later. So on your retro motherboard, you will have IDE ports. They're about 40 pin. So you would connect that device into your motherboard, into your retro motherboard. Just plug it in, and then plug the SATA cable into the 2 drive port, and you connect the same SATA, the other end of the SATA cable, into your SATA hard drive. And then after that, you connect the SATA power port from your hard drive to a it's a Molex to SATA adapter. So you connect the SATA end of that adapter into your hard drive, your SATA hard drive, and then you connect the Molex pin on that adapter to your power supply, and that's how you get power. That's how you power up the SATA SATA drive. So everything's outlined in that diagram that you see on the left. So you need to connect the IDE port in one of the IDE ports on the motherboard, okay? Then you connect the SATA cable to the adapter via 2 drive to a SATA port on the SATA hard drive. If you have a SATA power connector on your power supply, connect that to the hard drive. If you do not, well, some retro computers made from maybe around 2003 to 2005, especially Pentium 4 478s, might have SATA power connectors in the power supply. So if that's the case, then you could just simply connect the SATA power connector from your power supply to your hard drive. If you don't, then you'll have to buy the adapter and do it. The Molex to SATA power adapter connector. So then you would connect the 4-pin. Okay, I said that already. You could also do the same for your optical drive. Let's say your optical drive is failing and you can't find an IDE optical CD-ROM or an optical DVD-ROM drive. Then you would use an adapter to do the same thing for the optical drive as well. You would just connect the SATA cable. You would connect the IDE. You'd connect that device to one of the IDE ports, and then you would connect the SATA cable to the 2 drive port on that device, and you connect it to your optical disc SATA port. And then you would do the same thing with the power supply as well. Use the adapter, the Molex to SATA adapter, and connect the SATA connector to the optical drive. And then you would use a Molex, the 4-pin, to the power supply. And then that's how you would do it for the optical drive. So it's pretty much the same thing. And you could do this for additional SATA hard drives as well. Pretty much. So I'll leave the links on the video descriptions on where you can buy these things, like the adapters, like the IDE to SATA adapter, SATA to IDE adapter, and the Molex to SATA power connector as well. That's all you would need to add storage devices which aren't IDE. And also, as for the DVD ROMs, they sell new ones. I think they're made by LG. Some of them are made by Lighton and Samsung also. They sell DVD ROM drives, DVD RW drives, and these will work in your retro computer, and they don't cost very much. You could and the good thing about it is that they're new, so you wouldn't have to worry about it going bad anytime soon. That's the good thing about using this adapter. You could use newer devices, especially for the optical drives, but for the hard drives you're gonna have to buy used ones, because it's definitely not gonna work with a 1 terabyte SATA hard drive or anything like that. That's one of the cons about it. However, it is much newer than buying an IDE hard drive and putting it in there, which is old, and or putting an IDE optical drive in there, which is also very old. It's probably near the end of its life cycle. So it's better to have newer things in there. So these adapters will give you the option to do that. And as for the power supplies, you could always buy a new power supply and put it in there. If you do that, then you wouldn't need the power connector adapters, because it would come with it. You might need a SATA to Molex. You might need a SATA to Molex power connector if you do get a modern ATX power supply. That's about it. I'll add that next time. Okay, thanks for watching.